Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
All right, so you brought us here. We're now in the middle of the game. The game is going a very interesting way. And I wanted to let you in behind the scenes on a little bit of what was going on in my section. So, I'm going to call this segment Captain Moron from Section DD. The first thing that happens when I go into our seats is somebody is sitting in our seats. But being the nice guy that I hope that I am sometimes.
Too nice.
I decide, hey, the seats next to my seats are open, so we'll just sit in those. And this begins my journey with this gentleman that's sitting next to me who's wearing a badge, but of all the things that they can give out, it's kind of like the worst one. And he describes himself as a quote-unquote recruiter, which is essentially a made-up title. So at this point, there's a huge running play, Rob, as I think you'll remember, where Nando breaks out and runs downfield.
Yep.
This gentleman, as this is going on, is screaming to our section, don't celebrate. There's a flag on the field for holding. It's coming back. It's coming back, y'all. It's not good for Cal. It's going back. Sure enough, the flag is not against Cal. And he goes, okay, sorry about that, everybody. And it was at that moment when I knew I was in for a rough start. But when it got worse was I actually decided that, the game was not going in our favor. He's talking about how Wilcox and Knowlton both should be fired. And I'm like, what recruiter could possibly be yelling this at the top of his lungs? There's no recruiter that could sit there and say, oh, yeah, like, so anyways, moving on, we decided to leave. We moved to a section next to my parents' section over. But then after about 7 minutes of game time, people came to those seats. And I just said, we're just hanging out. And we moved back to our seats. So I come back, he's still in my seat. And I say, hey, man, sorry, but, at this point, I need to sit in my seat. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. I'm a recruiter. I was like, I don't know what that means, but I need to sit in my seat. It's all good, man. Just sit right here. I was like, there's not enough room. First of all, this dude is enormous. Like, there's not enough room to fit 3 people into 2 seats, let alone the fact that this guy is not a small individual. And he's like, it's all good, man. I'm a recruiter. No, it's not. I just need you to move. I was like, I just need you to go somewhere else. It's all good. Appreciate that you're a recruiter, but at this point in time, I need you to sit in my seats. And so finally, he moves a row back. And it's at this point in time where, so I'm already a little bit on edge. So now halftime happens. He spends the entire halftime arguing with a guy in our section, loud enough so that everyone in our section can hear it, about how, about Warriors things. And that the Warriors should trade Draymond, trade Jonathan Kuminga, basically trade everybody. And that the only reason why Klay Thompson is on the Warriors is because it's Steph Curry's fault for wanting to make too much money. Just like ludicrous things, which leads us to the beginning of the second half and leads us to the climax of this story, where Stanford comes out after our first drive and he says loud to the whole section, new quarterback, y'all, new quarterback in the game, new quarterback, y'all. And at which point, after the third time of hearing the new quarterback, I turned to him and said, that's Ashton Daniels, the same quarterback that's been playing for Stanford. Stop talking. And he looks over at me and I look back and you could just tell, it's like he wasn't expecting that reaction.
Yeah.
So we went quiet for a little bit. And towards the end of the game, so he continues on this whole thing about Knowlton and Wilcox. And then at the very end of the game, he just keeps going like this. He goes, y'all better win now. You're not going to want to go to Houston next week. You don't want to go to Houston. Y'all, those Cal Bears, they don't want to go to Houston. Y'all don't want to go to Houston. I'm like, we're going. The game is in Dallas.
Oh, my God.
So I am at my wit's end the entire game, but it's such an amazing comeback. And, elation takes over. He leaves after Cal wins. I don't hear anything more from him. And I turned to the old Blues that are, I forgot to mention this, that he had left my seats. And then at halftime, he came back and he sat in somebody else's seat in the same row that I'm in, despite the fact that those were completely full. And then when that person returned, he refused to move again. And he's like, oh, it's all good. Just sit next to me. I'm a recruiter, whatever that means. And so I turned to the guys that were nice enough, unlike me, to let him sit there. And everybody else, keep in mind, you're like legs tight, like the old school days of flying coach on a United flight.
Yeah.
We're like legs, like you're like this. I turned to them and I said, I just want to say that you all are like my heroes for putting up with that for an entire half. And these are like, you could just tell, like everyone in my section, they're season ticket holders, they're old Blues. They know what's going on. And they just turned to me and they said, that guy knew absolutely nothing about what he was talking about. It was this great moment. And I said, you know what? Absolutely. You're spot on. Go Bears. And then we turned to go try to get down to the field. But I think a lot of that really stuck with me, that this wasn't a pleasant viewing experience for me. This game was not pleasant for a variety of reasons, to your point. Like, I expected it to be a blowout. And then I have somebody that's agitating me to even further degree. And I'm trying to keep... It was actually great having my father-in-law there because I couldn't quite spiral the way that I would have if it was just me and a friend, where I really would have gone down at the deep end. But... yes, Captain Moron from Section Double D. I hope you don't come to any more Cal games.
The part of the story for me is like, I'm surprised that no one went to like one of the attendants or the ushers at any given point during all of this.
I'm not the type, which is weird. Like, I'll actually get into a verbal altercation over seeking out help. And I think, everything was just, it was really hard to place, because at the beginning, it seemed like he knew somebody and had some, it just sort of presented himself as somewhat of an authority figure. And so, I think everyone gives the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. And then as time wore on, it was very clear that he wasn't. And I think that at that point in time, you're also like, no, I don't think anyone wants to get up from watching the game. And that's why I was like, you know what? When he's shouting out that it's a new quarterback and it's still Ashton Daniels. New quarterback, y'all. You better watch out. This one can pass. I was like, no, he can't. No, he can't. Oh my gosh. Anyways, it was too much. And I hope we don't run into that again. But hey, we got the axe. That's all that matters.
I mean, that story when you told it to me on the phone the other day, I was dying. You had a comeback story of your own off the field in the stands, much like what was happening on the field.
We started from the bottom, and we ended up with the axe.
Oh man, absolutely incredible! Dude, even like for your experience there, my experience on the field, there's just even just because it is the big game, there's just so much more photographers. And so, like, the photo room was packed. I had to leave my stuff outside there's usually space on the table for me to leave stuff, but there was no stuff. Guys were like, like, I don't know if you know, like some of those like hard plastic cases, like called like Pelican cases, and some of the photographers like that are on deadlines are like squatting over their own Pelican case with a MacBook on top and like editing their pictures to like send off to their editors or whatever sites they need to send it off to. And I was like, man, having been to so many other conferences and stadiums now, and having done photography and videography at a lot of these stadiums now, we're really lacking in that regard to give them an adequate working space than a Harry Potter closet.
That's what makes it unique, Rob. That's the Cal experience. That's like when we would go and have the Firefest sandwiches in the press box, and then you go over to the away games and you're like, what is this? Like, what is this spread? You mean you don't have sandwiches that...
I tell you, man, I wish I got a third-person picture of myself when the lady at Notre Dame told me that we were getting pizza after the game. I was just like,
yeah,
what?
Just jaw dropped.
Yeah, just like, wait, what? What is this hospitality you speak of?
What is this unlimited money that the Catholics have in the middle of Indiana?
Yeah, I mean, but this game as a whole, like, I mean, I guess we should talk about the game for a little bit. Like, there were just look, Stanford threw the kitchen sink at this game. We kind of didn't, and I don't think we needed to. But everything that they did in terms of like trying to win happened. If not for a botched field goal attempt, they might have won this game. But that's why for me, it's like all analysis is out the door the moment it kicks off in a rivalry game, because the emotions and the moment take over for that. And that's kind of what happened.
I think I think that I have been sitting on these feelings for a while where I have a really hard time with this game in particular. But I want to acknowledge that I agree with you to an extent, that I think that as far as them throwing the kitchen sink, maybe they're a little bit more aggressive on fourth down and things like that. And I think that's a good call out. But where I sort of fall short is I think that, like, here's the thing with Wilcox, and this is what we would have been saying had the outcome been different. If we're the favorites, we never really cover with authority. Oregon State was weird for us because that was the first time where we really saw that come to life. But then again, the talent level isn't really a fair comparison. But if you think about like NC State and then Syracuse and then Stanford and then the games in the past where we've actually been favorites, we're never really the team that comes out and just like, yep, boom, open door, closed door. And even in past big games where it's felt like we should have had that, we've had tight halves and then had to have like a bigger second half. And so I think for me, I was sitting there trying to crystallize these thoughts of, there is a real issue with our inability to get to that next level to say, yeah, we should win this game and we're going to win this game and put it away early. In the same way as we rarely get completely, blown out of the building, if you will. Like, I expect SMU for us to play a competitive football game. We might have a chance to win it, but I'm not expecting us to get absolutely destroyed like the Niners did against the Packers this weekend, where I was like, yep, this is a loss. Now, different circumstances there, but nonetheless, it is a hallmark of the Wilcox era where we are this 500 team, and it goes both ways. We lose games that we're expected to win. Colorado, Arizona, right? Like the favorites. We should dominate these games. 40 players are out in the Arizona game. Call that what you will. The Colorado game, you don't have that excuse. Then you have the games where, we're the underdog and then we play up to the level. But like, that's the definition of a 500 team. That's it. Like, you meet the moment, but then you also cannot take that step to elevate yourself be above what kind of that average is. And even with the outcome of this game, there's no way I could come away from that. And I almost felt a little bit fish out of water because like everyone was pretty damn stoked on the field. And I felt like we just kind of got away with we kind of got away with one.
Yeah, Avi told me when you saw him, what you said to him.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it publicly because that was just between friends, but that was real emotion for me. That's what I was feeling. I just couldn't, it wasn't the same. It's different in 2019. And I think that's the thing is, as I was reading his article, which is great, and I recommend everybody read it, but like those emotions didn't hit the same way for me. It hit that way in 2019, but it didn't hit that way in 2024. Because now, like, we had expectations behind this. We're talking about a Stanford team that, Rob, to your point, it's like plus, in the 100s in S&P plus. Like, this should have been, and yes, it's a rivalry game, but I think that excuses a lot. What I saw from Stanford is like a clear game plan to execute what Syracuse did. And I honestly really wanted to give you your shout out here because you talked about the gaps and filling the gap, and we have the first gap filled, but then the next guy is supposed to be there. And then I also think you really talked about like the difference in Cade Uluave being out. I mean, Cade should be the player of the game. Like, he has a legitimate shot to be MVP. And the same thing goes for Teddy, because you lose either one of them, there's a clear production drop off. But Stanford was literally throwing the ball to wherever Liam Johnson and Hunter Barth were. Like, that's where they were going. And I'm not saying that to call those guys out. I'm just saying it was where Cade Uluave's replacement was, right? It's more so that than anything else. And that's what Syracuse did. And they had so much success with it. At a point where I was like, are we ever going to be able to figure this out? And we did. And the defense really locked down. Craig played amazing. Maybe his best game as Cal Bear. So there was a lot. Cam Sidney, I think, had his best game as Cal Bear. There was a lot of guys who stepped up. And then obviously David Reese has kind of been on his late season tear, similar to what he did last season. Xavier Carlton had a couple of big plays. So there were guys that kind of collectively stood up to meet the moment. But I think there was a lot there that was pretty concerning as far as like trends going. And then at some point I was like, after the first quarter, I was like, this feels like the Syracuse game. It did. And not in a good way. It felt exactly like it. So I kind of rained on your parade, but that's why I titled this segment Hype and Love versus Debbie Downer and Sadness, because I feel like I represent Debbie Downer and Sadness.
It's funny to me because, like, the conversations you and I have had over the years, and particularly over the last couple of years, where your outlook on the Cal season and your expectation for any Cal season has always been, let's get to a bowl game. Let's try and emulate what Utah does. Like, get to a bowl game every year, stay in postseason contention, get the extra practices, build on that, and move forward. And, we've had the conversations of you saying, 6-6 or 7-5 should be the bare minimum. And, with those seasons, you're always going to have frustration seasons of, there are games we should have won and there are games we should not have lost. And that's ultimately like what leads to a 6-6 or 7-5 season. And that's kind of the season that we're staring down at right now, in a very, very extreme case too, with only 9 points spreading across 4 losses. So it's funny. It's just like, not funny in like a laughable sense, but it's just like your expectations have changed for this program and this team, I think, since we moved into the ACC too. And I don't think that's changed maybe before the season, but I think it's changed as the season has progressed, which is like, I wonder how many other Cal fans feel that way too. Like that their expectation, knowing that the ACC in terms of parity and across the board isn't as wide, or the parity's a lot closer across the board than it was in very good Pac-12 seasons. allows you to start to feel these, I don't want to say emotions, but I guess expectations for the program to be able to capitalize on it, particularly seeing a team like SMU being able to do that in year one of a new conference.
You are exactly right. Exactly right. I think that it would be so different if Florida State was 10-2 and, Miami looked like more of a pure dominant team rather than sort of a good to great but lucky and fortunate team. And if NC State, I just think as you go down and you sort of look at the schedule and the quality of competition, it looked like an opportunity that was squandered more so than it did the 6-6 that is the foundation and the program maker. I will say with certain recruiting impacts that continuity matters right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to say anything more than that, but I think you're right. Like, it just didn't hit the same way. 2024 at this point against this Stanford team, the expectation was keeping the Axe. It was really our job, not the players. The players did their job. They won the game. But it's our coach's job to go out there and make an authoritative statement and saying, hey, Stanford, you're not close. This is where we're at, right? We've had enough time and we've had enough wins to build the ability to do that. And we almost blew it. So I think it was really hard for me to actually revel as much in this one. I just think we have an opportunity. We've proven out the model, right? Mm-hmm. We've proven out the model. We can get talent in here. We can get fans in the stadium. We can see what it's like to have 65,000 roaring fans. And let me tell you, at the end of that game was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. It was actually quite dead for the beginning part of the game. And a lot of the players on the sideline were trying to get people going. You could tell they wanted to get more energy into it. But I was like, honestly, until the product on the field gives people a reason to be invested, they're not going to be invested. Think about the other games I've seen this year. Syracuse, Miami, NC State, San Diego State. Am I missing one? Home game?
Davis?
No, I didn't. That's the only one I missed.
Yeah.
It's like San Diego State didn't even inspire that much confidence. I mean, it did, but in how bad San Diego State was, but we still had a lot of flaws. So I don't know. I think there was this idea of like, you have this full stadium, everyone's going to be loud. And it really wasn't that loud until you gave them something to cheer for. I think the model's there. Rich Lyons is in the stands leading the chant. And I feel like that moment to me was like, yes, I hope he really gets it here. Because when Knowlton comes on the halftime radio show and says, yeah, football's looking good after, a couple of rough games that didn't go our way, I don't think he gets it. I just don't. And I wish I had a better relationship there so I could actually say that with a little bit more authority. But from the peripherals, I just don't think he gets it. And I'm at the point now where, especially going back, and if you follow the Avi article of like how much this mattered and relevance now in college football, it's like, well, we have the relevance. We have the relevance. We had the relevance this year. We had the lore that you talk about. We had the talent that was there to be successful. And we have the same result. So for me, this game, I think I promised myself I wouldn't come on this podcast and pump sunshine because we won the game. Because I wanted to be honest about my emotions as I was going through it for the people that might be feeling the same way. Where, hey, we had this great outcome and you want to acknowledge that and say, this is an amazing outcome. I couldn't be more thrilled, honestly. 98 yards with my boys, that's incredible, right? It's incredible. And it's amazing for Fernando. It's amazing for Jonathan Brady. I went up to Ryan Coe and I talked to him and said, great job. Like, there's a lot to celebrate. It has nothing to do with the players. But it's like, dude, JW has to figure out a way to go and take that next step. I think I'm at the end of my patience here because, yeah, Utah wasn't 6-6 forever. Right? And it also wasn't their ceiling. The point of setting up the foundation of 6-6 is so that you can overperform against it, and you also deal with the underperformance when you reset. So it's like, yeah, you'll take the 4-8, knowing that the 8-4 and 10-2 is coming, and then you're going to have a 6-6 or 7-5 mixed in there. But it's like you're supposed to scale up and not plateau. And my concern is that we've plateaued at this team that can sort of win any game and also can lose any game. And at the end of the day, what does that get you? I don't know if that buys you ongoing relevance.
I don't have an answer to that question. Or that, you're speaking from your heart, and I think that's the whole point of having these conversations is like there's not one way to feel about this program. Everyone has a right to feel any way about the program the way they do. You and I both agree that we voice it so that we can put this in a more progressive and constructive view. So I totally get it. There were fans in the stands when I didn't like this at all, but it's well within their rights. When the team was coming off at halftime and Wilcox was there doing his radio interview for halftime, there was a guy sitting in the south end or north end zone who stood up and just kept yelling, Wilcox, you should be fired. Wilcox resign nonstop until he went off the field for halftime. I understand that there's a lot of fans that feel like that. I understand that it is well within your rights to do so. But at the same time, for that particular dude, it's time and place, man.
Time and place. It's what Giorgio said, right? Giorgio said, keep it respectful and make it something that you would you would say over having a beer.
Yep. Absolutely.
I understand the frustration. I would never boo that, but I literally booed a lot, some of the decisions on the play calls.
Yeah.
I just was, and I felt that we were playing a conservative game again, and that it was going to really bite us. And there was a couple of times when, dude, I hate to bring up a game, but the Ravens went for it on their own 17 tonight against your Chargers. Their own 17 on 4th and 1.
Yeah.
To keep that possession. And I think we were 4th and 3 at the 40 or 45, and we punted. And then we punted in the end zone. Or we were at the 50. It was a difference of 25 yards. And I was like, bravo. What a dumb decision. The game has evolved in ways that I think we need to do a better job of tapping into. And the coaches need to set up the players. There's no reason why Jaden Ott should be looking this pedestrian. I understand there's an injury there, but why are we not getting that guy in space? He still has the dynamic ability to get the ball in space and do things with it. But we don't do that. We're not throwing a quick swing pass to the outside or trying to do, who am I? I'm not an offensive coordinator, but I just think that there's better ways that when you look at the Bengals, they don't have a running game. They say that on the broadcast. The Bengals can't run the football, but instead they throw a ton of short passes, kind of like the air raid, and they get it out to their playmakers, specifically Chase Brown and Jamar Chase, and they let them work in space. When you have a guy like Jaden Ott, I think we should let him work in space and not continually force him to run or inside zone, where it's never worked. It's never worked all season long. At this point, I think we can call a spade. I get it, game 4. So it was really hard. I think this game had all of the same poor decision making, and even down to the first 2-point conversion where, I just think it had all the same elements that made up a loss. It's just the players willed it to a win in spite of what I think was a series of, whether you want to talk about defensive prep for I can't believe that Stanford was able to execute that well. You know, again, it's like I've watched 3 Stanford games. Like their offense isn't impressive. The only thing I'll give them credit for is they're coming off that Louisville win, which, you know what? I think that matters a lot. And just sort of shifting, hey, we can do this. We beat a top 25 team. Yeah, that's a mentality changing win. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the part where I say, to your point, okay, cool. We come off a top 25 win, mentality changing win. We're going into the big game. Cal's gettable, but like Cal shouldn't be gettable. Like we should not be gettable. It should be that game where we say, nope, you think we're gettable. Fine. Press us for like the first quarter, but you know, boom, after that, we got this. And it just seemed like we were playing more scared, and I was going to have to come on here and, you know, we're going to have a whole podcast about a coaching search, which I don't want to do. So I was, but that's really why I wanted to honor that, because I think that's where I was at. I was like, well, if we lose this, I mean, I think you would say the same thing. Like that was a do not pass go, no return, go straight to jail. Like you lose that game, the sky has fallen.
Yeah, you lose to this Stanford team.
Because that's the last argument. That last argument, well, at least we've won a ton of big games. And to Wilcox's credit, we win a lot of big games under him. But the second that argument goes away, I mean, what pillar do I have left to stand on? The graduation rate? They put up the graduation rate on the screen in the stadium, and not a single person had any reaction out of the like 75 people around me. I didn't see one person that was like, oh yeah, 97% graduation success rate. Let's go. No. Nope. But you saw a bunch of people really upset at halftime. All right, give me the positives, Rob. Give me the positives.
I mean, the positives is, I mean, I think you brought up one of the big ones, like the 98 yards with my boys, like that. Another chapter to the Fernando Mendoza lore. I think another soundbite that'll forever live in Cal fandom's hearts. I think that line, you know, in the last 4 years, right? Like, or the last big games we've won, like when Chase scrambled for the win, and we took back the axe for the first time in 9 years. Like that was a moment. 2020 punt.
2020 was like a classic Wilcox loss.
Yeah, the 2020
punt it. Move on. We're going positives.
2021, the Bill Musgrave. Here is my one great game under my tenure here in Berkeley, and it's against Stanford, and we absolutely crush them. Like amazing. 2022 felt eerily similar to this game, where it came down to basically one or two plays, and in that one, it came down to Peter Sherman's hoop and score. Last year's game in Palo Alto, it was Jay Knott and the kneeling inside the 5, which was like the moment from that game. And then this one, it was that final drive, 98 yards to the Jonathan Brady touchdown. Just wow. Just absolutely wow. Like just seeing that drive. I think most Cal fans, with the way the offense had gone the whole game, is just like, oh, we're probably going to, like, we're if we don't get a first down, like there's no shot. Like if we don't move the ball at all, we're not consistently getting first downs. But then the first offensive PI call gets called, and then, you know, there's that defensive illegal substitution that gets called, and then we're slowly moving down the field, and the pass to Nizia down the sideline, then the pass to Nizia over the middle, and then Mendoza tossing an absolute dart to Brady as he's being hit, which I put the footage up on my Instagram page from how I shot it, but like that was an incredible throw. And then, you know, the entire team celebrating and him basically crying and saying 98 yards with my boys, go Bears forever. There's not a lot of guys that can enter the Valhalla of Cal fandom and be forever like immortalized. But I think Nando has done that this year in moments. But this big game, that final drive, cemented him in giving him that space.
Can you talk about that video and that shot that you shared with me on your Instagram? If anyone has social and Instagram, go check it out. Give it a like, comment. It's such a cool video. But Rob, can you talk about, as that play is developing, what's going through your mind? I mean, we can basically see what's going through Jonathan Brady's mind as you're shooting it. But I mean, that play has so much going on. You have the capture of Fernando getting hit.
Yeah.
And then throwing the ball. And yeah, I'll let you take it from here. But I would love to hear what you're thinking as, I mean, you're also seeing a football player, like a play happen relatively close to where you're standing. So is there some awareness of, am I going to die?
Yeah, it's a moment of putting your body on the line a little bit. But, you know, like I slowed it down. Like that's like 25% of real speed. And so when I'm shooting it, I remember Nando throwing the ball, and on my camera screen, I see like the kind of the angle and direction that the ball is launched, and I'm like pretty clear it's coming towards my direction. So immediately what I do, and you see it in the video, is like I just zoomed out as far as I possibly could, because I was pretty zoomed in pretty heavily on Nando, and I zoom out as far as possible because I feel like it's coming, and right as I zoom out as far as possible, I see in the corner of my screen like Jonathan Brady like coming on into focus and like looking up, and I was like, oh, it's coming to Jonathan. And then so I just turn the camera a little bit, and then I track Jonathan and his body, so it hopefully stays in the middle of the screen. And then he caught it. And I had no idea the shot was going to look as good as it did until I got home and put it up and made it slow mode. But yeah, it was incredible, and he celebrated right in front, and that was a shot for the ages.
You could tell Brady had, when he scored the first touchdown.
Yeah,
he had a level of confidence and excitement that he was ready to meet the moment. And then the second one, I mean, when he came back to the sideline in front of the Cal fans, you know, behind the team, and he starts taking it, like, just, it was electric. There's no other way of describing it. It was just incredible. And I mean,
he had his moment, and like, I don't know if you saw, but like two things that from Brady was like, after the game, he said he kind of blacked out after the second touchdown. He doesn't quite remember a lot of the stuff that happened after he caught the pass. I saw everything
he did after that because it was all on the sideline. He was just hyped as can be, pumping up the crowd.
Yeah, and then the second thing was, I don't know, have you seen the picture of his celebration after the first touchdown?
I've seen it on the rewatch.
Yeah,
where he does like up to
him and Mikey Matthews do like a headstand on the side of the field on their helmets. It is absolutely incredible. Like, I think Al, one of the photographers for the team, has a really good picture on his Instagram of it. I have a video of it, and I took a screenshot of it and put it up on my Twitter too. But yeah, it was a super cool moment, doing a double headstand.
It was unreal. I think for me, probably the MVP of the game. Well, let's go. Let's choose players.
Yeah.
So I'll go Jonathan Brady on offense.
I got to go Nando. I think because you picked him. Shout out to Nando as well, because I sent that video to you as well. But I told you I've seen the shot of athletes signing the camera lens as like a sign off. You told me that tennis players used to do it, and it reminded me that, yes, I remember tennis players used to do this at Wimbledon. And then I saw Major League Baseball do this over the last year, so I really wanted to do this. So I looked up how to set this up, and it was possible, and I got all the accessories. I had a gold-colored pen. I have it with me right here somewhere. Yeah. Andy, you can see on the screen, there's like a glass gold pen. And I know I wanted to do that, and I didn't know who I wanted to do it with, but I walked around the field, with this setup and the pen, and then I saw Nando, and he was like he was just with like 40, 50 people around him, and someone would take a picture with him and another person would like take his spot. And so it was just constant people. And finally, a little opening happened where he was taking 2 pictures with kids, and I was standing right over there, and I had this camera set up with the lens looking at him and a pen in my hand, and we made eye contact, and I hit record, and then I handed him the pen, and he knew exactly what to do. And so he signed the camera lens, and Andy, I'm going to show you on the screen so you can describe it to people. But yeah, he just
wow, so cool.
Signed the camera. That's what created that shot. And so QB1 signs off from Memorial Stadium for 2024. I was like, perfect. Like I wanted either him or Ott. I wasn't sure if I was going to get either, but thankfully I got Nando. So I don't know if Nando's listening, but thank you, Nando, for that. That was my personal little moment that I'm forever going to remember from this season. So, Nando MVP for me.
I don't even think we need to choose defensive players. That's amazing. I love that. Maybe I'm coming around on the lore. The lore is pretty good.
The lore is pretty good. The lore isn't over yet, my friend. Remember, we're going bowling now.
I know.
We're going bowling.
Hopefully in LA.
Yeah, there's 2. There's like the one I'm pushing for you and me. Vegas, just because we can finally do that podcast recording at our Vegas site for Blue Wire in Allegiant Stadium is pretty cool. But LA, I told Nam, but like how there's no other way to top this season except for giving a Malort shot to Rob Gronkowski before the LA Bowl. seems like the only apt way to wrap up the season, right?
Lord help us. You know he's going to spike the glass.
Oh my God. We got free Malort. So, we'll probably do it again with Rob Gronkowski in tow.
It'd be really cool. I mean, to go where Jared got drafted and started his career. Yeah, obviously I think LA is easier. Vegas would be super cool. But I still think that Cal has a chance to play SMU tight. I think that would be fun. If Cal was able to actually make that game close and really talk about relevance there. I think that would be great.
If you can somehow pull out this victory in Dallas this week, I think you can probably start to convince people of, like, you can form a narrative of like, it was our first season in the ACC, we got adjusted, and we ended it on a high note, and we're going to try and build on it next year. I think it's a lot tougher to do that losing this week, because like you just only have the bowl game to really work with, but finishing off with a team and then beating a team that's in the ACC championship game with a shot to go to the playoffs and is in the top 25, I think would be a nice little jumping off point to the offseason.
I mean, I don't know about you, Rob, but I was told the game was in Houston.
Oh, was it? Sorry. I'm going to San Antonio. So, I guess we'll find out on Saturday where this game's being played. It could be Dallas, it could be Houston, it could be San Antonio, it could be Lubbock, it could be, who knows? Who knows?
Ay.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
I hope this so-called recruiter listens to our podcast. All right, that's good. Look ahead for SMU. We'll wrap there. Rob, I will turn it over to you to close us on out.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for us on the Golden Bearcast. And as usual, you can find us on Twitter at Golden Bearcast. Email us goldenbearcast@gmail.com. Find a lot of written stuff at writeforcalifornia.com. And if you're listening to us, you already know where to find us on all your podcast services of your choice. And that's it for us on the Golden Bearcast. We'll catch y'all next week. And as always, go Bears.
Go Bears. We got that axe.